So, Rob, last week we had on Corey Gumbs and we talked about the importance of community and almost like, I don't know, fate isn't the right word. It's kismet isn't the right word, but community is on, or should be, on every creator's mind. And Angela Hollowell, who is the first person we had on our show, she sent out a LinkedIn post that says, sometimes we conflate community building with posting on social media. Posting on social media just helps you find people to talk to. Community happens in the comments, the DMs, the email inboxes, phone calls, virtual meetings, and in real life interactions. Don't stop posting, but make an effort to get out there and talk to people.
It's a great post. And to just exacerbate my inability to go in order, I want to jump to the end.
Okay.
Just because you just said that, because I actually, Bodie, we're doing a podcast to try to make it be all professional and have a rundown of questions and topics and, bullet points that we wanted to talk about in order. And let's just go to the last one. So I said, what are the benefits of building a community? And the reason that I want to jump there is because it's the relationships. And that's exactly what I think that Angela Hollowell was talking about. It's not just getting on and posting to people who follow you. It's the relationships that come out of that. So it's the conversation, the discourse, going back and forth, checking on people, seeing how folks are, asking if someone needs help, letting folks know you need help and receiving it. That's all part of the community, the relationships.
Absolutely. And, to that end, in my communities that I've built, if I haven't heard from somebody in a while, I'll just reach out and be like, hey, how you doing? It means I don't know if it means the world to somebody who's listening to your show, but it means a lot to them to hear that you care and you remember who they are. Just this morning, I had an interview. Well, I didn't have the interview this morning. I had an interview like a year ago with a guy. And he reached out to me and he's like, hey, man, just want to say happy Thanksgiving. And do you have any mic recommendations? And I was like, absolutely. Like, this is a cool dude. We enjoyed chatting with each other, but I haven't talked to him in over a year. And I gave him 3 mic recommendations based on what he was looking for. That person, I didn't ever think I would hear from again. I'm going to consider that guy, his name is Dave, in my community now.
Yeah. And, a big part of it is just touching in with people when you don't want or expect anything from them.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and a lot of people think they're building a community, but what they are building is just people who will do stuff for them. And that's not a community. It's like, I'm posting this stuff because I want to grow my followers. I'm posting this stuff because I want people to follow me. I is the word there. And that's not community. It's part of it. But it's not in its entirety, in its totality. A big part of community is literally just conversing with people, having conversations, checking up to see how someone's doing. You never know. You may say, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. How are things going? And that might brighten up someone's day. That is, like I said, I am not one of those persons that's like all into feelings and this and that and the other. So I know that there's a lot of folks like me, but it does mean something when someone you haven't heard from in a while, they just reach out and just say, hey, how's it going? They didn't necessarily want anything other than to know how you were doing. And hey, it's good to hear from you. Haven't heard from you in a while. And then you might go another 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months before you have that conversation again. But that there's somebody out there who thinks about you in times other than when they want something from you.
Yeah. And Rob, that I'm gonna steal your fire here. But that takes us right into the first topic that you created for our show today, which is, as a creator, when should you start to care about your community?
And I wrote that very specifically. When should you start to care? And I was thinking about this, and I was actually having a conversation with someone who was like, so, I know that I want to eventually have a community. And they're running off all these things that they are thinking about what a community is to them. But the question is like, but when should I focus on building that? When should I care? Do I need to get like 100 followers? Do I have to have 1,000 followers? What do I need? And this for actually subscribers. This was someone who's building a YouTube channel. When should I start to care about that community? And, when I thought about it, I was like, now's the time. You haven't even started the YouTube channel yet. Now is the time to start thinking about the community. Because, and I think you and I have both stumbled upon this, that oftentimes the people who are there with you from the very beginning are the strongest members. They are the pillars of your community. They're the ones who become the moderators. They're the ones who are asking, who ask the first question beyond you asking them questions. So I think that as a creator, and it doesn't matter if you're doing YouTube, if you're doing if you're writing a newsletter, if you're podcasting like we do, I think that you want to think about your community at the onset of creating whatever piece of content delivery system that you're creating.
Community can be as few as two. In Kilowatt, the very first person who signed up, his name was James, and the next person that signed up, his name was Mark. Both of those folks are still a part of that community, and they're still very engaged in that community. But for a long time, our community was a total of 3. And in the, that has grown significantly over the years. But 3 was a perfectly fine community back when it was 3. Like I'm happy that all the other people are part of the Kilowatt community for sure, especially the paid community. But I was having good conversations with 2 other people. And so don't set your sights so much on how big your community needs to be. As long as you're having good conversations and everybody's helping each other out, you have a solid community.
These are things that I think about absolutely now. And it's funny. I get asked a lot of questions, Bodie, about, well, if you were starting over, what would you do differently? And that's a trap question, because I started podcasting 18 and a half years ago. I started blogging in the 90s. So I've been doing this type of stuff for a very, very long time. So what would I do differently? Literally everything, because it's a different world now than back when I got started. But one of the things that I do come back on, because I did not think about community. I don't even know if for the first several years of creating content, if community was even a word. It was just, I have these things to say. I want to put them in a blog. I'm going to put them on a podcast and then release them into the world, and hopefully people will listen or read the things that I've said. But I do think about community now, so much so that if I were consulting someone specifically on building a podcast, and, one of the questions I get, well, how do you find the first people who are going to listen? To your show, or who are going to watch your show? Because I'm not one of those folks that, I don't really believe in the field of dreams method. And I know I'm aging myself with that. A lot of people who might be listening haven't seen the movie Field of Dreams, but it's an excellent movie starring Kevin Costner. And there's a point in the movie where there is, I know where I'm going to go with this, Bodie, but is, if you build it, he will come. Most people think it is they will come, but it's actually he. If you build it, he will come. And I say that, I'm not a Field of Dreams type of creator, because I don't think that just because you built something, unless you are already famous or infamous, the people are just going to find it because of you and then partake in it. And, you get tons of followers, tons of clients, and everything off of it. I think that you need to do more. So from a community standpoint, now as I am building out these podcasts, building out these YouTube channels, building out these email newsletters, I'm thinking about community from the very onset of it. So much so to where, like, I think that I'm almost at the point to where I would say that it makes sense that if you're even thinking about building a podcast, you probably want to start a community before you even record your first episode, because you can build up anticipation for the thing that is coming if you are having conversations about the thing you're going to podcast about with people. If you're doing that on social media, if you're doing that in person, you can get someone excited about something that's coming and say, hey, I'm thinking about launching this podcast. Here's what it's going to be about. These are kind of conversations we're going to have. And you can literally, inside of a community, start having those conversations and get people potentially excited about the thing you're creating. So when you launch, you're not launching to no one and then hoping people find it and become your community. You're launching to the community you've already fostered and just talking about the thing that you're trying to get off the ground. So if I were to say, like, I want to launch to have at least 100 people potentially that will listen to my thing or watch my thing or read my thing or whatever the case is, I would start working on that at the very beginning, just because it's easier to do before you have the content created, because the community almost in a way can dictate what the content will be. They'll tell you what they want, and then you can go create based off of that.
Yeah, and if you're like, well, I don't know where to find these folks, you get involved, like Rob said, get involved in the conversations on Twitter. You don't have to follow anybody, but interact with them. And they're going to look at your profile if you said something smart and interesting or funny or whatever sparks their interest. But I don't do this. I don't do a very good job in this. But there are plenty of events in your area surrounding the topic that you want to discuss on your podcast, unless it's you, then that's a little bit of a different story. But let's just say, we'll use this podcast, for example. There is a Phoenix Podcasters Association. They have meetings every month. I think it's the first Thursday of every month. I've been to a few of them. I've met some really nice people. There are places that you can go to find that community and tell them about what you're working on. For Kilowatt, there's a Tesla meetup that's pretty regular once a month, and they get together in a mall parking lot or whatever, and they all set up and they hang out and they talk. And it's not just limited to Teslas; it can be all sorts of different electric vehicles, or you can just go there and learn. So this is where you go to find your community. This is how you build that group, and then reach out to other people who've been doing this longer than you and ask for advice.
Right. I think one of the things that, people have to think about and understand when it comes to community doesn't necessarily mean your community. It doesn't mean that you've built this thing and it's only people who are associated with you. Community can mean, like, do you guys have Quaker Steak and Lubes, where you're at? Mm-hmm. So for us in the summertime, every Wednesday, there's about 1,000 people who will pull up in classic cars every single Wednesday. At this Quaker Steak and Lube, the parking lot is giant. The parking lot is way bigger than the restaurant could ever use. And the reason for that is because there's so many things that are happening in the parking lot that actually are not happening inside of the restaurant. People will go on to get wings and get beer and this, that, and the other, but they are literally hanging out in the parking lot. Well, that didn't start by 1,000 people just randomly showed up at the same place and this is kind of cool. We should, keep doing this. It probably started off, like you said, Bodie, 2 or 3. And then someone, you guys, you guys, is this like a thing? You guys all, meet your Corvette. I've got like a 74 Stingray. When are you guys going to be here next? That's how community starts. They start off small and then they get big, and you eventually get to where you've got, hundreds of people in a parking lot every Wednesday night. During the summer months. So, you absolutely can go where people are talking about the thing that you have a little bit of expertise in. We say this on this show fairly regularly, that repetition builds reputation. So even if it is on social media, as Angela said, don't just go to social media to just post and think that that's going to be the thing. Actually contribute, answer questions. Answer questions, in areas where you have expertise. If you continually keep showing up in places where people who have interest in things that you have interest in, and they show up in these places regularly, and you continually show that you have maybe a little bit more knowledge than the average Joe in one of these places, your reputation will be, oh, this person has the answers to questions. And here's how things kind of work. People tend to believe that when you know the answer to, like, if somebody asks a question in a group or in on social media, and you answer it, and then you come back and ask another question related to the same thing, and you answer that, and then they ask a third question, and you answer that. After you've answered about 3 questions to one person, they will just automatically think that you now know everything about everything that they have to ask about that thing. That may not be true, but they think it. You're building a reputation of this person knows about this thing. So Just go to where people are hanging out and have conversations. And that's literally how how a community can grow. You're already part of one, but maybe there's something that, you're focusing on a particular area in this larger community. And you kind of, I don't want to say break off, because I'm not saying go to someone else's community to steal people from it. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that you may find that when you're in a very large place, like on social media or in a Facebook group or something like that, that you may find that, just by being helpful and answering questions about things you have expertise about will attract people to you, to where they now want to hang out with you and get more of your, more knowledge and share knowledge with you. And, you show them some things, they show you some things. And that's ultimately how community builds.
So then that leads us, Rob, to the next phase, which is once you got a couple folks in your community, how are you going to foster that? How do we keep people engaged in that community?
This is, to me, one of the harder parts of getting a community off of the ground. Someone generally or usually is the leader of that community. And if it's something that's associated with your content, something that you've created, people are going to look to you to kind of get that fostered. So what kind of things are you going to foster? You want to ask people questions. You want to make sure that you're asking people questions, you're answering people's questions, you're being very receptive to them. There is going to be a lot of work on the part of the community moderator at the beginning, just because people are going to lurk at first and they want to see, is anyone asking questions? Is anyone answering questions? So you want to facilitate conversation between people as much as possible. So it's going to start with you. You're going to have to actually ask questions. You're going to have to go and answer questions. Once you do that, you will then be able to, kind of get to know people and know what people, you'll get to know what other people potentially would have to offer a particular community. So now, as your community starts to grow, things you can do is, well, you don't answer all the questions. Someone can ask a question, based off of a conversation with someone else in the community, that they have the answer. You don't answer the question. You actually, tag the person that has the answer and then prompt them to answer. So now you have community members talking amongst themselves as compared to you being the single point of contact. It's hard in the beginning. You are going to be that for the very beginning of your community, because that's, people are going to lurk and they only know you. But over time, if you can foster that community, you can help it grow if you're able to link people to each other so that they're talking amongst themselves, as compared to only going to the moderator or the owner of the group, the owner of the community.
If you're effective in whatever you're content creating, whether you're doing a social media post or a short form video type stuff, you're doing long form on YouTube, whatever you're doing and whatever your subject is, your audience has joined your community because they already see you as an expert. If you recognize people in your community, like Rob is saying, this person knows exactly what the answer is, even if you know what it is, give it to them. That builds value to that person, and maybe they go out and start something great, or they continue being active in your community. Rob, you're active in the Black Podcasters Association. At this point in time, I would imagine that you're giving more advice than you're receiving in that group. I don't get the feeling, because you and Corey are friends, but I don't get the feeling that you have any interest in leaving that group just because, you have a certain amount of expertise. Like, you're there for the community. And I don't think most other people would be like, well, now you've given me so much praise and I'm the expert, I'm going to leave too. You know what I mean? It's not a competition, is what I'm trying to say. Is I'm poorly doing this, but share the love, share, give everybody flowers who deserves flowers. Elevate them to that, almost like a leadership role in that community, unofficial, but elevate them.
I don't know who initially said this, but there's a saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. So yeah, when there's a group of people and everyone brings their own level of expertise to that group. They bring their own experiences to that group. They bring their own, projects that they're working on to that group. And as you get to know people, it is much better to be a matchmaker than it is to answer all the questions, because that gets boring after a while. At that point, it feels like training. I'm going to go to this group. I'm going to ask my questions. This person's going to answer them. I want to get my information. Then I want to go and I want to do something. Now, I don't want to say that that's wrong, that, some communities they may be based off of that. That's how they're structured. So I don't want to say if that's what you do that, if it's working for you, then great. But when I'm truly thinking about community that can exist on its own without the moderators actively putting content into the community, that can only happen when you're connecting people with each other. And it's another reason why communities exist in the first place, why people want to join these things, for the diversity of thought in a lot of ways. To basically, you may join a community because, you're an RC racer and you like to race your cars against other people who have RC cars. So you start hanging out with people who race RC cars. And then you decide to kind of form a group to where, okay, every Saturday at 2, we're going to meet at this park and we're all going to race. And then as you're there, you're going to see someone who has a different car from the what you have. Oh, what is that kind of car? What kind of, what does that do? Why did you do this way? Why, I'm not an RC racer to that extent to where I get into the nitty gritty of it, but there are people who are. And the way you find out stuff is by seeing other people have done something and say, oh, that's kind of cool. And then you go and do, some of the same things. So the way for me that a community is fostered is when the moderators are very intentional about not answering every question, but by actually putting questions out to the group and allowing someone else that has that expertise to actually answer. Now, particularly in the beginning, you got to moderate that. Because if you have a level of expertise, maybe someone else doesn't and they may miss something. So, but you're at least giving them the opportunity, and you can go in and you can correct in a non-accusatory way where actually you now have both people learning something, in your group. But it's just very important that you actually are fostering community by actually allowing the community to interact with itself, not just with the moderators.
Can I give you an example that I had this week or maybe it was last week, of a really good, effective way that community can work? So Anon Jr. is a community member for the Daily Tech News Show. Anon Jr. writes emails all the time in for a Daily Tech News Show. He is very active on the Daily Tech News Show Patreon. We, Rob, released the episode with technical issues and making mistakes and being okay with that, and they're going to happen. We released that episode. You told a story about how at your church, you always give your pastor, you have backups, redundancies to the mics and all that stuff. And Anon, he sent an email through Patreon. He sent a message to us, and he shared his experience with that. And it's basically he's like, we always have their preacher, they is always, or reverend or whatever he was, he's always mic'd up with a physical mic. And then he has, if he steps away from the podium, whatever, he has a wireless mic to access to. But that is Anon Jr., who is really good in the DTNS community, right? He answers questions. He provides additional, I don't know what he does for a living, but I know it's technical based on his emails. But he answers questions. He gives more insight. He's very active in that community. And then he came over to our community, and he is, kind of starting that process in our community. And that is, I consider him to be a really good asset for the community, because he takes it upon himself to answer these questions, to interact, to make the community better.
Here's something, Bodie, that I found about people who join these communities. A lot of times you're going to have people like yourself, myself, like Anon Jr., where they have a level of expertise in something, and it could be a significant level of expertise in something. And you will often find that people who have expertise in stuff, they like to talk about the stuff they have expertise in. And you may have someone in a community where if you're a member of a community, you ask a question about something that this person has expertise in, because they are also a member of the community, they are more than happy to answer that question. And it is extremely rare that they are looking for something in return. It is just you asked a question in my wheelhouse. I have the answer and the time to answer it. I'm going to go and do so. Corey Gumbs, made this point in an episode we did with him in talking about community. You potentially can get answers to questions when you are a member of a community that would cost you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to get outside of the community. Because although that person likes to answer questions that are asked of them, it's not effective to do it, for every person that asks individually, because they would never have time to get the work done. Or if that is their work, they would never eat if they were doing all that for free. But inside of that community, that's just kind of where they go and, oh yeah, I got the time to answer this question. Let me tell this person, here's how I got through this. Where if you were consulting with that person, it could literally cost you hundreds or thousands of dollars to have that same conversation. So those are some of the benefits. I know I jumped around as to what a benefit is, but a benefit of a community is being able to lean on and receive some of the expertise of the community simply because you're a member of it.
What are your thoughts on, where people should be building these communities? Where like, I would imagine if you have a hyper local community, if you're talking about your neighborhood or your city, you could build that community in real life, like right out in the open, have meetings and things like that. But if you have something that's a broad subject like technology, that's going to be a little more difficult to have in real life IRL meetings. Where would you recommend people go?
So it's interesting because I don't want to say evolving. I don't want to seem like I'm not a fan of social media, because I absolutely, and I understand what social media is. I get it. I've got accounts on multiple platforms and I use social media daily. But very recently, Elon Musk, this is in the last couple of days actually, has let the world know, he's reminded the world that you don't own, in many cases, your own social media account. And this comes up from, not to get completely sidetracked, but like Alex InfoWars basically was auctioned off, everything, including the X accounts. Elon Musk said, no, you don't own those X accounts. I own those X accounts, which is true. If you were to go look at your terms of service for X, if you were to look at the terms of service for TikTok, if you look at the terms of service for Threads, for Instagram, you don't own those accounts. You can't just transfer those accounts without actually getting permission from those companies. So that lets me know that social media, you don't own it. So I don't generally recommend that people do things like build a community, inside of someone else's walled garden where you don't have any control of it. I look to things to where, it's a service that you use. Now, Discord is a place where people would build communities. I feel a little bit better about that because you basically are getting the services from Discord and people are creating their accounts, but you have a little bit more control over the content that's going on in there. I would look at things like Circle, or things like Mighty Networks, or things like Kajabi, or platforms that exist where it's not a social media platform. You may even pay to have access to the platform, but you are responsible for creating the community on the platform. And the platform, the way they generate their revenue is that you pay them for the use of the platform. It's not free where you just, they're making their money off of the social media aspect of it. So I'm not a fan of building communities in social media, just because at any time, things can change, algorithms can change, and that could adversely affect your, your community. Some folks are going to say, well, what about Facebook groups? I've heard of, ginormous, groups inside of Facebook. They're great, but at the same time, they are social media. And I've generally seen people move off of Facebook to go to other things, and not so much go from other things and move to Facebook. So I'm a fan of Patreon. We use it. That's where we're building a community. I'm a fan of Mighty Networks. I use it, and I'm a member of a couple communities there. I am a member of a few communities that have been built on Circle. I am testing out School for another project that I'm working on. So there are plenty of platforms out there that would allow you to host conversation, to host files, to to get folks. Another place where you could build community is literally with an email, newsletter, where you can build a community in something like Substack. I'm kind of coming around the Substack just because I've seen how some people are using it. And you do own your list inside of Substack. You could export it out and take that list somewhere else because it's based off of people's email addresses, not based off of a account that they have within Substack. So the answer to where should you build your community is pretty much anywhere. There are all kinds of places where you can build communities, many for free, some others for charge, where I tend to, say, I don't know that I would do it here. I don't know that I would build it inside of Threads. I don't know that I would build it on a social media platform, just because those platforms are designed to benefit the company running the platform, not necessarily designed to benefit the people who are on it. I don't want to say there's an antagonistic relationship there, but you could run into, I've seen groups that existed in Facebook where Facebook didn't like some of the things were happening in the group and they shut the group down. And then, well, what do we do? It's like, well, hopefully you had everybody's email because that group no longer exists as far as Facebook is concerned.
Yeah, it becomes way more difficult to regain that momentum. I do want to say one of the things that I liked about when Justin Robert Young switched over to Substack, he had nothing but good things to say with the folks that he was working with during the transition. Now, he's a big account. That's not going to be the same for smaller creators, but it is nice to know, hey, they're there to help and they are trying. They're not actively ignoring you as a creator. So that's good. The other thing that I really liked when we talked to Corey is Group App. He said that even, the founder of the company, Group App is small, was really responsive to his needs and the community's needs. And, I'm not saying the other ones that Rob mentioned aren't that, that's something you have to look into for yourself. But for me, if I was going to pull the trigger on one of those two, it kind of depends. They're not apples to apples comparisons. But if I was going to pull the trigger on one of those two services or any service, I would want to know, hey, I know so-and-so, and I know that they got good service from this company, because that's important to me. When I have a problem, I need to be able to reach out to somebody. Now, I don't have a contact at Patreon, but I have reached out to Patreon before, and they've always been very responsive, and it's been a positive experience. And some of those problems that I had involved getting my money. And, that could be a sticky wicket, because there's a lot of emotions involved when they're holding onto your money because of whatever reason. So make sure to do your research and find out what their support looks like, and if that's going to match what you need as a creator.
If I could say, what am I looking for in a community a little bit more eloquently? I would want my community that their monetization mechanism, that basically the community software that I am using, because we're talking about software at this point, or software services. The software or the service is the product. That's what I'm looking for in a community. That the thing that I'm using is the product, whether it be free or paid. The thing that I am using is the product. I don't want the members of the community to be the product for the company, if that makes sense. And that's why I make a distinction between social media and companies that make money some other way other than social media. Because I think that when you actually are, in like a Facebook group, Facebook actually puts wrappers around how you can even monetize, or even if you technically should be monetizing that community, because Facebook's model is to monetize the people in the groups, not for you to monetize people in the groups. That's their model. So I would just recommend that when you are looking for a community software, community services, that the service that you're looking at is the product, not the members of the community being the product for the company.
Yeah, completely agree. We've talked about protecting your audience or your community in the past, and you definitely. I don't know if I've told you this story, Rob. When my family and I started going to this church, and it was good. It was good. I'm Catholic, so I'm not used to going to church and the first 25 minutes of church being a rock and roll concert. But that's the kind of church this was, and we liked the pastor, we liked the people there. And then one day I was trying to cancel. My oldest had a gym membership that I got for her over the summertime, and it was time to cancel because she went back to school. And I'm in there, and the preacher's there, and he is trying to get a free membership at Lifetime Fitness, not Lifetime, 24 Hour Fitness for him and his wife if he could bring his community in, the parish in for the thing. And we stopped going to church that day, to that church. We stopped going to that church that day because I was like, you know what, man, this guy's offering you like $19 a month. At that time was pretty good. They didn't have the $7 a month plans like they do now, or $9 a month, whatever it is. And that made a significant impact on me. One, because I just wanted to cancel my membership, but two, I had to sit there and listen for 45 minutes. This guy trying to save $20 a month for he and his wife.
Yeah, that is the icky side of like affiliate marketing.
It is.
Not to change gears on, us talking about community, but I'll just throw that out there about affiliate marketing. I am a fan of affiliate marketing when it's done ethically. So you will never hear me talk about something that I have an affiliate relationship with that I wouldn't have used without the affiliate relationship. But if I'm telling you, here is the podcasting hosting service that I think you should use, and the only reason I'm doing that is because they are paying me, that just makes me feel icky. It's like, because I value my opinion more than I would value what little bit of money I might make off that relationship. So, that seems, the situation that you're telling me seems like it is, I will join this gym if you give it to me for free. And for in exchange, I will tell my flock about how great the gym is so that they come here, and that's how you make your money. And that's how mine gets, that's how my membership gets paid for. That doesn't, I know some folks are going to say semantics, but, no, it's not. I think that you can truly sponsor something where you are truly looking out for the best interests of someone. You can have an affiliate relationship with someone where you truly are looking out for what is best, or you're truly basing it off of your opinion of something. And it's not a thing of where you get, well, I'm only doing this because I'm getting paid for it. So I can see why you felt some ick there. That just doesn't seem cool.
Yeah, it wasn't. But I also don't want that to open up the emails of this is why religion's bad, because I'm pro all types of religions. So that it wasn't some sort of bias confirmation. It was this guy is a human person who is subject to the same foibles we all are.
Yeah, that had nothing to do with the religion. That had everything to do with it. That was just an icky type of affiliate relationship that person was trying to set up. Just
yeah. And I think we've kind of already jumped into the next topic, which is the pitfalls of community. We've touched on a couple of those. Do you have any other pitfalls?
Yes. Pitfall is that when you start it, it's an absolute time suck. And you have to know that. You have to know that going into it. It is an absolute time suck when you start it, because when you first start your community, no one belongs to it except for you. When you are starting, unless it is a group of people, and that's when you decide to actually go create it. But if you're doing like, we said, if you're thinking about community before you even build the thing that the community is going to, revolve around, it can be a time suck in the beginning, because you're going to be the one posting questions to the community. You're going to be the one answering all the questions for the community. You're going to be the one making connections between members of the community until it actually gets momentum and it and it begins to move on its own. So you just have to know it is going to be a time suck. You are going to, it's like, man, why won't these people talk to each other? Because people don't talk to each other until they talk to each other. It's just one of those things. We can't tell you when it's going to happen. We can tell you that the consistency to the plan that eventually it is going to. Usually that's the case. Sometimes, there's some times when it just, it just wasn't the right, the right time for that particular community. I understand that. So yeah, that is a definite pitfall. It can absolutely be a time suck in the beginning. It's so worth it once you get it going, but it can absolutely be a time suck in the beginning.
Yeah. It is oddly satisfying when you do see the community in there interacting without you. And, depending on where your level of narcissism is, that may sound crazy to you or not. But when you look in there and you see people helping each other out or joking around or discussing a subject, it's really I don't know, it just makes you proud. It makes you proud that you were able to facilitate some sort of conversation amongst people who are maybe across the world from one another, or come from different ideologies or whatever. It's just it's a nice thing for people to bond over.
Yeah, you can. I've heard somebody explain communities and building communities like being a club promoter for a new club. In the beginning, it's a lot of hard work. You've got to have Thursday's got to be karaoke night, and Tuesday's got to be ladies' night. And you've got to do these things as the promoter to get people in the door. But over time, people start to understand. I come here and I like hanging out at this place. I like the people that I'm hanging out with, at this particular club, and it gets a momentum of its own. You don't necessarily stop doing those other things, but it isn't necessarily the promoter doing those things. It could be now. It's just everybody knows that Thursday night's karaoke night. No one really had to set it up. There's a karaoke machine. It's just, someone who works there now is just setting that thing up. There wasn't an advertisement for it. There wasn't a big promotion to get people to come in. It's just that once everyone knows, every Thursday, that's when we have karaoke. Then it becomes a lot easier on that promoter because they don't have to actively do that promotion. But in the beginning, it's like not just, hey, Thursday night's karaoke night. They're handing out flyers or saying, hey, would you like to come? It's like, get in free before 10 o'clock. Those kind of things have to happen in the beginning. And that is all on the builder of said community. You have to look at yourself as the club promoter in the beginning to where it is incumbent upon you to get things running and off the ground.
That is so true. And I love the analogy of running a club, because it kind of does feel that way for sure. Although I've never run a club, but if I had to imagine what it was like, that's how I would manage it. What are some of this kind of brings us to our final topics, which again, you started off with, and we've kind of hit pretty hard, but what are some benefits we haven't already discussed in building a community?
The relationships. I have seen communities that have there are a few communities I've been a member of for years in some cases. And I've seen collaborations inside of these communities. I've seen businesses spurn out of these communities. I've seen marriages out of some of these communities. I've seen other communities come out of these communities. So it's what are some of the benefits? It's if it's a great community, it's a great place to belong. The relationships are the value in that community. The fact that this person, or you are at least there's something in common. It's like, I'm a member of this community, they're a member of the community, and you can reach out and have a conversation with someone simply because you both belong to the same thing. That is a very, very valuable thing. Like I said, I have friendships that will be lifelong friendships at this point because I met somebody in a community over a shared common interest that we had. We have come to find out that we have many more interests outside of the community, and we're friends outside of the community and hang out and do things outside of the community. I, cannot place value on that because now there are people who I would consider some of my best friends that I've actually met inside of the community. In some cases that were free, in some cases that I was actually paying to be a member of.
Yeah. And I don't have anything to add because that's exactly my experience as well. I mean, the marriage thing, I don't know. I've married couples that are part of my community, but in terms of my personal relationships, like next week, I'm planning on going and having coffee with somebody who listens to my other show, who's in town for a work thing. I've had lunches with people, and it's really nice to meet people in real life. But yeah, and those things, as a shy person who is introverted, I'm a friendly person, but I'm very introverted, and I'm not usually the first person to speak up in anything, whether it's online or through in real life type of things. But once you get me going, you can't shut me up. And these relationships that you can build through these systems, whether it's going to the podcaster meetup or some creator meetup, or going to the Tesla meetup or whatever, those relationships may not spur like best friend type vibes, but somebody that you can go to if you need help, somebody that you can go to if you're stuck. And when you're stuck, or if you're feeling lonely in this job, those people are going to support you and pull you out.
Bodie, you and I know each other because of a community that someone that you and I both know belongs to. Allison Sheridan, came, she basically is a member of the SMR podcast community. And we have not, SMR podcast right now is on hiatus. We haven't done the show probably in 2.5, 3 months. But it's on hiatus. But I still get text messages from people who are members of that community. The community didn't stop just because we stopped creating content for it. And we're going to get back to it in the beginning of the year. For anybody who listens to this, who also listens, to that, we are coming back to regular conversations. But you and I have ultimately met because I, at some point, met Allison Sheridan through a community that she became a member of for SMR podcast, and brought her on the show and got to know her. And she will not let me eat for free anytime I, pay to eat anytime I'm around her. She will, she and her husband, Steve, will take me out whenever they see me. And it's cool. These are now friends that I have independently of a podcast that was created. And she's introduced me to people that, she's introduced you to people, and we've ultimately, you and I have been able to come together simply because I knew this person and she hooked me up with someone who you knew, and we ended up having mutual friends. And then we ended up, you felt comfortable to reach out to me, and now you and I are doing a podcast together that is in season 3. So that's what community can do. Like I said, it can be so much more than that. Like I said, I actually know people who are a member of a community that I'm a member of, who have gotten married, and they met each other in the community. We all met at the same time. 2 of them are now married.
That's a really good thing that I hadn't been thinking of. I'm a member of Allison's community. I'm also a member of SMR's community, member of the DTNS community. I help out Allison often. She comes on my show often. She's come on our show. But through those communities and those interactions that I've touched with the DTNS, SMR, and through Allison's show, I have people who actively came over from those communities to my community, and they're very active in my community as well. So that just goes to show you, go be active, and there will be some crossover.
People tend to like to hang out with people who like the same stuff they like. It's not 100% fast rule, but if you are really, really, really into RC car racing, there's a good chance that someone else who's also really, really, really into RC car racing, that you could join a community together where you will hang out every other week racing cars, doing what you do, or flying drones, or paint, or painting, or whatever the shared experience is that you both enjoy, or that multiple of you enjoy. That's ultimately, how communities are started, and that's how they're built. And as I said, what are the benefits? It's the relationships, because as I said, there are people that I know that I consider very, very good friends, who I met because we were a member of a community about something that we don't even really talk about all that much any longer. We talk about it when we talk about it, but there are so many other things that we have in common that those usually dominate the conversation whenever we get together. And that is invaluable. And I believe that is, the relationships, as I said at the beginning, are the most important thing about a community, because you never know who you're going to know in a community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rob, I think we have done a really good job of getting a 30-minute podcast done in about 50 minutes. Do you have any parting thoughts?
No, I will just go back to, to the first item. Since we started with the fifth item, I'll go back to the first one now. If you are a creator, and it doesn't matter what your creation is, if you are a creator in the space and you're listening to a show like, the show that you're on right now, if you're listening to, Beyond the Post.fm, then you should be thinking about the people that your content impacts in the way that a community can be built. You should be thinking about that right now, because as Bodie said at the beginning, you started off your Kilowatt podcast community with 3 people. It has grown since then, but it was only 3 people in the beginning. And I think that a lot of times we look at these, you look at like Amy Porterfield and you look at like her community or something like that, or you look at like a Pat Flynn, like they got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who are listening to them, and tens of thousands that are members of their communities. And you think, well, that's what I've got to be. It's like, no, that's, maybe you'll get there one day, but that's not how communities start. They start off with just a few people who are, coming together around a common goal, a common shared interest, and just hanging out and getting to know each other and answering questions and asking questions and helping, and being helpful. And I think if you're thinking about that, from day one, not about what a community can do for you, but what a community can do for the community, what it can do for the members of the community, I think you're starting in a good place.
So Rob, we're into season 3 right now, but if people want to know how we put together season 3, how could they do that?
Well, they can become a patron. They can become a patron of Beyond the Post, where we actually have some inside sausage making type episodes where we literally are building in public, inside of our patron community. So where folks can come and you're going to hear us almost stream of conscious think about how are we going to build the next thing that we're building for Beyond the Post. So I think that's probably the most apropos way. Join our community. If you're interested in how Bodie and I are building a community, join our community. We'll tell you we're not shy.
Nope.
We'll show you exactly what we're doing. That's kind of the reason that the community exists, so that we have a place where people who are interested in the type of content that we're creating can come and hang out and get some of that behind the scenes type information about what we're doing to grow our own community, to grow our own platform, to grow our own YouTube channel, to grow our own podcast, to grow our own new email newsletter, all the things that we're doing as far as content and putting it out in the world.
Yeah. And just because Rob and I've been doing this for a while doesn't mean it's easy. Like we're new podcasts. We're still facing the same struggles that every other podcast out there is making. We might have some different solutions if you've never done this before, but you're gonna see us run up against some hurdles and discuss how we're gonna solve those. So I would highly encourage people to go check it out.
Absolutely. So yeah, just come hang out with us. So just head over to beyondthepost.fm/Patreon. And we've got a few tiers over there. And, we'd love to have you come hang out with us.